How many times have Europeans tried to invade Russia? A few. Napoleon tried. Why does everyone want to invade Russia? It's far away. It's freezing. No one ever succeeds in doing it. It's like Afghanistan or Yemen. Not a long track record of victory. If outside forces taking control, there are a few peoples around the world that are tough to beat, history suggests. And the Russians are at the top of that list. So why do people keep trying? Well, in a word, resources. That's why. Russia is unimaginably large, literally unimaginably. Most people in the West haven't imagined how large Russia is. Russia is larger than China and India put together. You combine the landmass of China, so big you can barely get your head around it, and India, almost as big, and together they're smaller than Russia. Siberia itself is about the size of the continental United States, and there are like 10 million people living there. In all of Russia, there are about 140 million, something like that, in all of Russia. Meanwhile, Russia has the deepest energy reserves in the world, some of the highest uranium enrichment in the world. It has, by some measures, the most gold in the world, silver, bauxite for aluminum, timber, by far the largest timber reserves in the world, which people still need, by the way. Pulp for paper, dimensional lumber for building, people still need trees. And Russia has more than any other place, primarily in Siberia, but not just in Siberia. And of course, farmland and agricultural products, fertilizer, wheat. Russia has as much or more than anyone and very few people. So the promise of access to Russian resources and space and land has been a siren that has called invaders for centuries. And no judgment, by the way. You can see why. If Greenland is a prize, what is Russia? The biggest prize of all. And you saw this attitude on display the moment the wall fell. And rapacious foreigners, mostly bankers, moved into Russia and stripped it. And they were helped along by a lot of unscrupulous indigenous Russians. It wasn't just outsiders who did it. Some Russian oligarchs did it to their own people. But the fact is, a small group of people denuded the country, looted it. And unfortunately, this always plays out in exactly the same way. It's not enough to loot. You have to take everything and drive everyone else into despair, hopelessness, and poverty. And that's exactly what happened. Russia 30 years ago, 35 years ago, was certainly the poorest country west of, I don't know. Who even knows? I mean, Bhutan? Really poor. And divided and sad and defeated, and alcoholism and drug use and gasoline huffing and suicide were endemic. And who did that? Well, the Russians to some extent did it to themselves. You know, they were living in this Soviet system for 70 years. But outsiders did it to them too. That's a fact. And whatever you think of Putin, he's bad. Putin got that under control. And Russia in 2026 bears no resemblance whatsoever to Russia in 2000, the year Putin took over. And one of the main changes he made is he kicked the money changers out of the temple. He did. Sorry. Everyone else has forgotten that, ignores it. He kicked the oligarchs out, or he brought them to his side. You can't act independently of the national interest. Sure, you can become a billionaire, but some of it has to go to the country. And that was spun in the West as cartel behavior. He's the mafia boss. Okay, fine. He's the mafia boss. But the real answer to the question, did it work or not, is obvious not just in the numbers, but in the state of the country, the visible state of the country now versus 25 years ago. It's a completely different place. It's no longer Bhutan. It's not Africa. By some measures, it's much richer than any country in Western Europe. In fact, by every measure it is. By every single measure. Is it richer than Spain? Is it richer than the UK? Oh yeah, much. So that is both tempting to elites from around the world. Wait a second, why do 140 million Russians get all this stuff? We should have some too. But it is also an indictment of their leadership. If you're Boris Johnson and your ancestors ruled the waves, ruled the British Empire, and your country is a kind of sad Urdu-speaking museum now. That's insulting. Really, the Russians? Those weird half-Slavic... I mean, they dominate world chess, but like, really? They're not really white, and how are they doing so well? This is outrageous. It is an indictment of your own leadership, and in countries across Europe, the leaders feel that way. Russia is an embarrassment to them because it is, relatively speaking, thriving. And so they all, as one, backed the Biden administration's plan to have a war with Russia. And let's stop lying. This was not an unprovoked invasion. Putin just randomly went over the line into eastern Ukraine and stole these oblasts. He stole this land that belonged to another people. That's a total lie. And it's not a defense of Putin to call it out as a lie, because it is. And everybody knows it now. The truth is that in 2001, Putin, same guy, same leader, asked the Bush administration in person, directly to George W. Bush, I would like to join NATO. I would like to join the defensive alliance that exists to keep me from moving west into Western Europe. In other words, you won. I'm joining your team. And due in part to his own limitations as a leader, and due in part to the counsel that he received from Condoleezza Rice at the time, George W. Bush turned down that offer and prevented Russia from joining NATO. And the guest we're going to speak to in a moment, if you're wondering if he has a good track record of calling future events, said at the time, this decision to turn down Vladimir Putin's, this was 25 years ago, Vladimir Putin's request to join NATO, to join the West, to all be in it together, to work together. This decision made by the Bush administration guarantees a collision with the West. We are now on a collision course. And of course, he was absolutely right. Because NATO didn't want Russia because NATO wanted a war with Russia. And boy, they got it. And so from 2001 all the way to 2022, 21 years, NATO moved inexorably east, surrounding Russia. And many times, again, this is not a defense of Russia. It's just a fact. Many times the Russian government under Putin said, whoa, 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 whoa. You are threatening our core national interest, which is not to have other people's missiles on our borders. Back off. And then in 2014, the Obama administration overthrew the government of Ukraine to put an American puppet in there, thereby sealing the fate of nations. When that happened, and Sergei Karganov said it at the time, you have just guaranteed a war in Ukraine that will destroy Ukraine. So as you listen to the interview, and we hope you listen carefully because the English is not flawless, and it was done over satellite from Moscow, so it's not the best audio, but it's worth listening. That man that you're going to hear has a long track record of calling events right. And it's not to detract from his powers of perception or his intellect, which is formidable, to say other people could have drawn the same conclusions because it's pretty freaking obvious. If you exclude Russia from NATO, you're probably seeking a war with Russia. And if you try to put nuclear-armed missiles on Russia's border, you're probably going to get a military response. That's exactly what he said. And of course, he was laughed at in Europe, where he'd spent a lot of his life. And he was totally ignored by the United States. And our policymakers were on to this, that, or the other thing. They were not paying any attention at all. And to the extent they were very excited for this war with Russia. And they never really explained why. And then once that war began 4 years ago, they began to act through their proxy, the Ukrainian government under Zelensky, truly a proxy, in a war that has been managed from day one, in part by the CIA, our CIA, targeting by the CIA. Anyone who tells you that's not true is lying. They began to act with not just recklessness, but extreme recklessness, the kind of behavior that suggests you don't care about the consequences at all. You're just all in. Actually, at some point, the kind of behavior that suggests a death wish. This suggests, like, I actually want a nuclear holocaust. I'm happy to risk the lives of my family, my nation, and the world in a nuclear exchange. And we know that because of what they did. They blew up Nord Stream, which was the main source of natural gas for Europe. So that did two things. One, it destroyed the European economy. That was obviously going to happen. And it did. Because you can't have a robust economy, certainly not a manufacturing economy, without cheap energy. Without cheap energy, you're left with what? Real estate and finance. And of course, the people making these decisions are familiar only with real estate and finance because that's the world they live in. But in the real world, countries become rich and powerful and stable and resilient because they make things. So that's the first thing. We blew up Nord Stream. So that destroys our supposedly closest allies in Europe, particularly in Germany. Germans hate themselves so much they won't even admit that we did it, but we did it. Through proxies, but we did it, as we said we would. And the second thing that it did is send a very clear message to Russia, we're done. We're not going to have a kind of Vietnam scenario where we have a proxy war, but, there are limits to our behavior. Yeah, we'll spray Agent Orange, but we're not actually going to, level Hanoi. We bomb it on the edges, but there are limits to what we're going to do because we don't actually want to war with the Soviets. American and NATO behavior since the beginning of this war suggests there are no limits at all. Blowing up Russian infrastructure, trying to assassinate Putin repeatedly. They lie about it, but yes, they have. Yes, they have. The Ukrainian government has tried to assassinate Vladimir Putin multiple times. Has the CIA assisted with the targeting of those drones? Yes, obviously. Tell me how you didn't. No one's even asked them. And again, it's not taking sides against the United States with Russia. No, it's trying to think clearly about what are the potential consequences of this kind of behavior, torquing it up consistently over 4 years to a point where you've cornered a great power. Oh, but that's the problem. They don't consider Russia a great power. When we started this company, we promised that we would only partner with other companies that share our values. We didn't want to advertise products made by people who hate us or, for that matter, you. So with that in mind, it is a pleasure to announce that we're working with Charity Mobile. It is a pro-life phone company. Charity Mobile holds a view on abortion that almost every single major U.S. company disagrees with. They think it's completely wrong. It is sad. And celebrating it is one of the darkest things this country's ever done. We agree completely. So when you switch your cell phone service to this American company, they'll donate a percentage of your monthly price plan to a pro-life, pro-family charity that you choose. There's no better way to prove what their real values are than doing that. No one would do that unless they meant it. All their plans are under $50, and you can keep your existing number and your existing phone if it's compatible. Charity Mobile is a pro-life company serving pro-life customers and supporting pro-life causes and has done it for more than 30 years. Visit CharityMobile.com/Tucker. Use promo code Tucker to get a free phone with free activation, free shipping, and a free gift with every new line of service. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.